My name is Brenda Irwin. It's 10 o'clock, so we're going to start the Digital Health Tech panel. We are waiting on one panel member, Skip, who hopefully will be joining us. We're going to have a record-breaking introduction, and I'll start. Brenda Irwin. I am the managing partner of Relentless Venture Fund. I am based out of Vancouver, and we invest in North America. If you want more details about any of us, you have our profiles. Asaf.
Good morning. My name is Asaf Barnea. I'm the CEO of Sanar Ventures. We're based in Israel. It's a JV of Philips and Teva Pharmaceutical. We invest between $1 to $5 million in digital health and medical devices companies. At the moment, we have 17 companies. I'm also the chairman of the Life Science Board in the Israeli Export Institution. So this is a government branch that promotes export out of Israel in life science. This is close to $10 billion pharma, medical devices, digital health, and biotech. So I get to see a bit of the ecosystem both from the micro and macro perspective.
Great, Dominic.
Hey, I'm Dominic Meyer, principal at AO Invest. We are based in Switzerland, but we invest everything between San Francisco and Tel Aviv. We are quite unique in our focus. We invest in everything that is somehow related to orthopedic and trauma. Can be biotech, digital health, medtech, but there needs to be a use case for orthopedic surgeons. The reason is that our limited partner is one of the biggest communities of orthopedic surgeons in the world with a network of 20,000 members.
Dennis Steppen.
Yeah, we really need to speak into the mic, and if you're standing at the back, you can hear a lot better up front.
Dennis Steppenbush, I'm Director of New Ventures Initiatives for Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas. We run a $50 million fund that invests in companies that A, improve the health markets in general, B, are strategic to Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and C, provide returns.
Wonderful, and just in time, Skip.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having us here. My name is Skip Fleshman. I'm with the venture firm named Asset Management Ventures. We've been investing since 1965 in both tech and healthcare markets. And since about 2008, we've been, particularly me, focused significantly on digital health, the intersection of tech and healthcare. And we're early stage. Think of us as a Series A fund. And we like to take companies that are quite clinical in nature, improving outcomes, showing data. Thank you.
Wonderful. So we're going to start off by giving a little deeper perspective from each of our panel members. As the outline for this session indicates, we want to discuss a little bit more detail about how software is being leveraged to lower costs and improve health, but we're all represented in different parts of that very broad umbrella. So more specifically, we may be involved in creating new efficiencies in the healthcare system or in how care is delivered, or some of us may be, such as myself, very focused on improving patient empowerment. So I'm going to ask each of our panel members to discuss, are they involved in all areas as outlined? And if yes or no, define a little bit where their areas of emphasis are. I'm going to start with Dominic, because I think yours is very specific, as you mentioned, with orthopedics. So how does that impact care delivery, patient engagement, and the entire healthcare ecosystem?
Okay, so the answer is quite general, because I think all three of them are super important right now. There's a lot of potential for improvement in all three of them. So I think when it comes to surgery and orthopedics, from a patient perspective, there is a lot of lack of transparency. There's a real black box, like what's happening, how can I get like the best care, how can I really know my surgeon is doing the right thing for me, what happens after my surgery. On the same side, we look at more the infrastructure level in surgery. Often in hospitals, it's still very old school. So you have lots of paper, you have lots of information silos that are not connected. In connecting those silos, like preclinical, pre-op, during the surgery, and then our patient-reported outcome measures, if you really connect the dots, you can improve your offering as a surgeon, and while doing so, you can also improve, and this is now patient empowerment, the experience for the patient, because you have data points for every step of the patient journey.
Would you mind sharing with us one example from your current portfolio that highlights the areas of emphasis for the fund?
Sure. So we have one company, it's a digital surgery based in London. They started mainly as an education company for surgeons, but now they develop a complete tool for surgeons. And one of their newest products, it's Go Surgery. And it's really I would call it a common infrastructure for the operating room. So you have all those devices in the operating room, you have lots of data that is created, but you have no alignment to really read and optimize the output. So what they do, they connect all those sources, connect the results from what is happening in the surgery, what happened before with the patient. So they also collect data from the patient before, they collect data from like the best practice and bring this knowledge and those insights directly to the surgeon in the operating room. And by connecting all those different data sources, I think the experience for the patient and the clinical outcomes can be improved.
Wonderful. It sounds like a one-stop shop in terms of digital health. And we've just met each other in person for the first time, and I was excited, even though Dominic is based in Zurich. He just informed me that he invested in a company based in my hometown in Vancouver, so yay. So don't be frightened by geographical messaging here in terms of where people are located, and time permitting, we'll get a little bit of insight as to how you can get people's attention across the globe. I'm going to jump to Dennis now. Dennis, can you share where in the areas of digital health tech you focus?
Sure. So I would say the trend is increasing to where our self-insured employers that we manage are demanding cost reductions, because health insurance really isn't a benefit anymore, it's a cost. So we need to turn those tables around. So anything that can engage a member or a patient to save costs and make the healthcare experience more efficient is what we're interested in. A couple of things that we've made investments in. One is Healthify. So social determinants of health is becoming in vogue finally, in that 40% of a patient's cost or experience is around social determinants. So access to food, mental health, lodging, clothing, you name it, those things are being brought together. So we've started a pilot to engage our providers to have access to the full database of social services. And then it does cross referrals. So some person in crisis in need of a lot of social activities usually doesn't just need food. They need food, lodging, and so we have an active referral basis that goes across agencies. But it also allows us to track the services being provided and the referrals being made. So now, if we can complete it statewide, we'll be able to notice, okay, there's a great deal of transportation in Southwest Kansas, and we have a lower cost of care there. Is that one of the drivers? So it's one more piece of the data puzzle that didn't exist before, and it makes a difference.
Amazing. Great. Thank you. Skip. And just before Skip starts, long session, lots of noise at the back, lots of seats up front. So please join us.
So our firm tends, as I mentioned earlier, tends to focus on companies that are clinical in nature. They do end up selling into therapeutic biotech companies, payers, also some providers. But we do tend to like companies that are a bit more scalable and have high margins. So we shy away from services business or tech-enabled services. A few areas that we've been looking at lately, I'll give you 5. One would be the digital therapeutic sector, which I think we could talk a lot about that. It's multifaceted to me. There could be app only, it could be app plus device, it could be co-developed with pharma for a very specific indication, a very specific drug. We also are looking at scalability solutions. And what do I mean by this? This is something that can help a healthcare professional, could be a specialist, a primary care physician, a nurse practitioner, get more scale. How can we make their job easier? How can we make them see more patients? How can we empower patients in this regard to take advantage of their own health, take care of their own health? Another area we think there's some distinctive data sets out there that are relatively new. One would be EMR data, one would be genomic data, and one would be real world data collected by device, smartphone, watch, you name it. And all these data sets are relatively new. So the companies that take advantage of these new data sets They can combine them because you can have genomic data, but without the corresponding healthcare record, there's really not much there. So we need to put these data sets together. So that's another area we're focused on. Precision medicine would be the fourth. And precision medicine for us is often genomic data, but it's really how can we become more precise, and computational knowledge is another interesting area. How can we become more precise in diagnosis? How can we become more precise in treatment? And then finally, clinical trial management. The spend annually in clinical trials is enormous, as many of us know, and how can we just make that more efficient? I think that's an area that's a little bit difficult for a tech inventor to address, but it's an area that we like. Thanks.
And Skip, within the five areas of emphasis that you just outlined, could you pick just one company from one of those areas to elucidate a little bit more?
Picking one of my kids.
It's all right. It's all right. We won't tell. We're not being recorded.
So
yes,
I think one that encompasses a lot of things that touch. It touches every piece of the ecosystem as a company named Evidation Health. And what Evidation started with was a platform to get users, consumers, to attach devices or applications or anything health-oriented to an application. And this application incented them by giving them dollars for things that they did that were healthy. They gave them points, which ultimately turned into dollars. This platform was called Achievement. They ended up with 200,000 people on this, and then we said, hey, we need to figure out a business model for this, which we did. And that business model is running clinical trials for digital interventions. So they're quite sophisticated at recruiting at scale very quickly and running randomized controlled trials and generating economic evidence that validates the business model, that validates a payer paying for this in conjunction with that. So that's where they started. The platform now, Achievement, has I think 2.5 million members on it. They recruited a trial with Humana, 10,000 people in 2 weeks, a hypertension study. So it's really scalable. And the application itself is now developed for clinical trial recruitment and administration as well. So it's not just a little gamey app, it's actually very clinical in nature. Big thing is consents. And where they're going next is fascinating too. Two areas of strong interest. One, FDA and pharma, real world outcomes is a very strong area of interest. And finally, digital biomarkers. So those are what's coming next. Really impressive company that touches on that.
Private?
It's a private.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And Asaf?
So as I said, we're basically investing in technologies which might be synergistic to Teva and Philips. And if I may illustrate, there's one digital health company that we have invested in, a spin-off from Tel Aviv University called LifeGraph. It's an AI technology for early detection of migraines. There's a true value in detecting migraines in the early stage, in the prodrome, before the true migraine starts. Once it has started, it's like a train that left the stations. Even if you do take your pills, this is not as effective. Teva is much into migraines, so is some other companies. So we have invested in this AI technology that basically, through this mobile phone as an app, now it's commercial, you can download it, and they started like less than a year ago. But basically, and we actually have taken them from mental health, from looking into the early stages of manic depression attack into this more oriented, business-oriented, with an easier business model on our side, at least as investors, to the migraine, and also because of the synergy to Teva, to the detection of those migraines. And the true value there could be both for the patient in terms of managing their lives better. I mean, this is typically something that helps you in terms of the disease management, but also from the side of the pharma players. Whenever they say, beyond the pill technology, this is really something that you can really bring in. And I'm quoting Jonathan Bush from Athena, who visited me, 2 years ago, and I'm quoting him when saying, and this is something that I put on my agenda as well, we are stepping into a future whereby, as he said, the moment we're going to prescribe the drug is the moment we're going to prescribe the application. It's not going to go separately in the next few years. Hopefully there will be an integration of those. So LifeGraph is actually listening to the tone of your voice, looking into the acceleration mode of a patient. They see the number of fixation, night awakenings, building up a profile, and then seeing the specific deviation before the migraine attack starts. Beautiful results. We are able to detect migraine 3 days in advance. So as such, you have a weather forecast, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 70% of a migraine attack. You know how to manage your life if you have an event that you need to go or anything else. So this is one of our companies. The other is actually on the efficiency side and the cost reduction is a company called TaylorMed. Here in the US, for whoever was unfortunately diagnosed with cancer, for instance, this is a double hit, both from the financial perspective and definitely from the clinical one. And hospitals are losing between $4 to $5 billion every year from services that they do provide and eventually cannot collect. So there are many debt collecting companies. Sort of this company has chosen a different route. It's an AI technology that basically looking into the clinical journey of the patient, whatever he's going to be doing, CTs, chemotherapy, surgery. And as such, there's a parallel equivalent to that, which is the financial journey, how much it's going to cost. Then they project whether this specific patient is going to fall, unfortunately, into potential bankruptcy. And then the software optimizes the insurance coverage or support lines from the pharma companies and others. They've started a year and a half ago, now 15 folks, data scientists doing an amazing job already with 10 commercial installations in the States. This is something that we see definitely looking into the buckets of money. This is both helping the patient, saving a lot of money, and bringing in additional revenues for the hospitals which were not able to collect them in advance. So we may invest in technologies which could be either synergistic, as I said before, or the digital health, and some of which are this one, by the way, or could be also synergistic to Philips. And the last one maybe is like the in-between example. There's a company that we've invested in with a device on it. And there's a major issue whether we should invest just in software or also software with a device. It's a company that called My Home Doc. It's a device that you put on your smartphone, basically with 4 sensors, allowing primary care testing, remote medicine, telemedicine, through that device, holistic, very cost-effective device that could be, to patients, kind of a B2C as well as a B2B to providers as well. So we're doing basically a lot of variety kind of technologies with various business models.
I think we're definitely in the era of redefining even what prevention is and the ability to make predictions. I was at, as you mentioned, with the migraine company, a different conference yesterday, a very provocative slide where the last image that was put up by a company said, your heart attack will arrive in 2 days. It's like, I mean, there's a lot of other issues that come up with that kind of messaging with companies and information, but we are going into a new era of information and information management around our health, and I'm going to take moderator privilege and highlight in the areas of digital health tech where the Relentless Venture Fund, we are brand new, so I don't have the challenge that Skip does. I have one investment, so I get to pick the only child, which is an embedded sensor in a total knee replacement. It's a data and sensory technology company called Canary Medical, and the exciting prospects about that are the platform potential and creating new ways for patients to interact with their acute and chronic care providers. So just a little note on the Relentless Venture Fund. Okay, so next up, we're going to have a couple of our panel members speak to the following question, and it's what gets your attention? So before asking the question, how many entrepreneurs are in the room? Keep your hands up. How many of those entrepreneurs in the room are currently fundraising? How many, keep your hands up, how many of those entrepreneurs in the room are waiting for responses to inbound emails or requests for some attention? Oh, yeah. Didn't see any hands go down. I don't know if you noticed that. Okay, you can put them down. So the question is, what gets your attention? So data, information, results, what makes a company who you've never met, I am going to start with you, Dominic, based in Zurich. The power of technology is it should be we should be geographically agnostic until we think as investors about what does this mean about due diligence, meaning entrepreneurs, meaning co-investors. That's our reality, but you hope that first and foremost you get some attention jumping off. So I'm going to pass the baton first to Dominic and says, what gets your attention in inbounds?
Okay, so I think when we talk about data, that was data that is relevant, and let me elaborate to that. So basically, I think the digital health problem is that we have 2 silos of information. We have the traditional healthcare world that is not really embracing digital technologies yet. On the other side, we have the digital world. Those are like maybe ex-Google people, ex-Facebook people that like now see the huge problems we have in healthcare and try to solve this with digital technology. And they come together. But the approaches you use in the standard software world are not necessarily working well in healthcare. Let's talk about data, for example. In the consumer space, you always said, data is the new oil. Move fast and break things. We will get all the data and then we'll find out what we do with it later. And we have a lot of startups approaching us that way, and they're like, oh, we can collect so much data and it will be great. And then the surgeons or the physicians, they look at it and like, yeah, but what should I do with the data? Yeah, maybe you can do this and that. I'm like, yeah, but do you have clinical validation that there is really a relationship between the data and the outcomes? No, but we can get that. And obviously the problem is a circle because you will never get it if you don't start at a point. But really, if you talk to physicians and surgeons, you really have to keep in mind this is not marketing. If someone makes a mistake, people die. So the data needs to be bulletproof. It should not just increase by something by 2-3%. There needs a clear relationship. I think one example we invested, the Vancouver company we invested in, it's a VR education company for surgeons. And I don't know, the current education for surgeons, people often say that the approach is see one, do one, teach one, which is not very good from patient perspective because you would be happy if they had more practice. So a lot of companies try to educate surgeons in virtual reality and give them some feedback. But this company stood out because the feedback they gave was to the highest standard, founded and grounded in the literature, founded and grounded in what every surgeon would teach the residents, the students, and they gave that feedback back to the person in the virtual reality space. And every surgeon we showed this technology to was like, wow, this is exactly what we need. Whereas a lot of companies really don't connect the data to measurable, clinically relevant outcomes.
So Dominic, with that company in Vancouver, how much impact did it have for you when first connecting that it was a physician-founded business with a clinician tool?
Yeah, in the end, it's necessary. I don't want to be too absolute. I think there can be healthcare companies where there is no physician in the team and they can be successful, but in the end, the secret is often domain knowledge. And you need to have that. And especially if you talk to physicians, you really need to know your customers. And if you're not a physician and you know physicians very well, then that's fine. But in our experience, let me think, most companies, no, it's 50-50. 50-50 of our companies have a physician in the founding team. But we were impressed by all of them, so I think both ways are working.
I would add from my own experience in looking at different companies that it makes a big difference, even if you don't have a physician involved in the founding team, have somebody hands-on and not an ad hoc as you don't want to give an investor a reason to say no. So if you have had somebody actively involved in product development and strategy from the beginning, there's a tip for you. So just before we move on, Dominic, is there anything specific you could share with this group about what you're hunting for in terms of data or information? What do you want to see?
So personally, I would really, to get back to what you asked at the very beginning, patient empowerment. Data that help the patient make a smart decision. And I think there are quite a few companies working on that really help the patient to navigate the healthcare journey.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to have the same question and pass it on to Skip around what gets your attention in terms of businesses coming into you. Is it data? What kind of results? What's maybe the minimum, and what's the anything that you're hunting for as well?
Yeah, it's a question we often get. I think in digital health or healthcare, it's important to think about the size of the market and the impact that is being made. Oftentimes we're seeing pitches and pitch decks that have relatively small markets, and we just know they'll be difficult to penetrate. So any good venture capitalist always thinks about this. Now, this doesn't mean it's a bad idea. It just means it might not hit our idea of a massive outcome, right? A multi-billion-dollar exit, but it still could be a good company. I think we also want to see something that's differentiated and protectable. And many investments or many things in digital health, many companies that are started don't have core protectability, either in intellectual property or something proprietary or difficult to do. That's just the way our firm is. We're an old school firm, 56 years old now. And we like to see some defensibility baked into the technology. And if we don't see those two things, then I think it's pretty quick dismissal for us. The team is always vitally important. I think there's sometimes where they take investor Evidation, for example, we invested in them with 4 founders. Right? It was a bet on a team and an idea on what we could do with data long term. So the team is vitally important. If you think about the way venture capitalists think about these things, we actually put it almost into risk buckets. Like, what is the risk around the market? What is the risk around defensibility? What is the risk around the team? What is the risk around financing? Can this company continue to raise capital? And we try to mitigate those risks. But what really jumps out, I think, is a large enough market opportunity and something that's differentiated. And I would bet, an insurance company now, they've been inundated, or self-insured employer, they've been inundated with how many different DPP programs, how many different diabetes prevention, how many different hypertension programs. They're overwhelmed. And so you need to have something that's differentiated and, as Dominic said earlier, has the data that shows that it's effective and can save money. So I think the differentiation, what comes across my desk now, so many things are very, very similar, and it's hard to distinguish them. And we're invested in Welldoc, which is a type 2 diabetes company. Boy, the noise between Livongo, Welldoc, and Omada, and Virta. Oh my goodness, they're confusing the whole marketplace. So I think something that really jumps out that is different and more challenging.
So even on that competitive, the list that you just compared in terms of diabetes prevention and having been an investor in Welldoc, I think we all receive decks that have these massive opportunities, and I think some entrepreneurs assume us to read between the lines. When you see the other competition, can you give a little bit more color around what you see, maybe the company you invested in versus the others that stood out from a market opportunity?
That's a good question. It goes back to what we're talking about with digital therapeutics. And it was, 3 years ago, we were looking at a lot of different digital therapeutic companies. There was Pear, there was, which is in behavioral health, Propeller Health, which is sold for $225 million, another interesting example. We looked at a lot of these, and what we liked about Welldoc, first of all, they're the first FDA-approved intervention for digital health. But they had really good outcomes data, especially for people with high levels of A1C. They were lowering people's A1C from 9 to 7. And they've since done an economic analysis of this by Truman, where they're showing the cost savings is $5,000-6,000 a year if you're lowering A1C that significant. And so we like to see their data. Now, there are other players in the spectrum, right? Omada Health is a DPP program, it's before diabetes. We also like the fact that they were 100% software. That was really helpful for us, where if you look at Virta Health or Livongo, heavy into the services. There's a high touch model. There are a lot of phone calls and back and forth, which we try to avoid. So, that's just a personal bias for our firm. There's no right or wrong answer. You can skin the cat many different ways. And I think they're also relevant for different people. I think Virta, Sammy Inkinen is a really smart guy. He's saying you can reverse diabetes with a keto diet. Well, I think for some people you can. But I think we like to see things that can address a massive market, and that's where you can get some scalability out of a Welldoc. Now, one big mistake we made with Welldoc, or the company made, was they were prescription only to start with. And then you're having to rope in the physician, right? You have to get a script, So that took away the self-insured employer market entirely. So it sounds cool, we're FDA approved, you have to get a script. It's harder. You're increasing barriers there. And so what they've since done is they've created a consumer version, which is distributed on Samsung. They have a self-insured employer version, which is non-RX. So they're beginning to hit the market in different ways. And this whole market around digital therapeutics, by the way, everybody's doing everything. Your type 2 diabetes, your hypertension, your DPP, they're all trying to do it. So it's getting a lot of noise.
And from that's a fantastic share in terms of the original investment decision and things that happened post-investment. Around the outcomes data, was it robust or was it pilot?
No, this is a later stage investment for us. It's a little bit rare, was a recap. But typically, we have, it's a chicken and egg problem actually, because the entrepreneur comes in and says, we need some money for, to run a study. I said, well, we got to see the data before we give any money. So it's not very helpful sometimes. But we do like to see that data. With Welldoc, it was a very established company. They just received their 10th patent, issued patent this week. And they had already done many, many studies and we published many different things.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you. Okay, we're going to shift to a new idea or a conversation here, and we want to do a little bit of reflection on 2018 and ask a couple other members of our panel about what they saw as the greatest disruptors, either personally with their fund or just generally in the market, and how it's impacted moving forward for all of us in the digital health tech space. And I'm going to start with Dennis. And just a reminder to speak right into that.
I think the biggest marker of 2018 is the ACA didn't change. So we actually had some predictability in the market, which opened up opportunity for more digital therapeutics and member engagement strategies. So at the end of the day, it's going to be a provider decision, no matter how much we push it through our system. And so to have them have a predictable year meant that their buying patterns and our buying patterns were not based on another plan tipping over.
Was there anything that you saw that did disrupt effectively?
Yeah, I think we're starting to see the merging of a lot of technologies. So Solera Health is a good example. They aren't a DPP provider. They consolidate all the DPPs, which made our buying decision a lot easier because not everybody in digital health is engaged at the same way. So if we can have 25 offerings and, you know, I'm probably not a candidate for Weight Watchers for a DPP program, but I might be a candidate for Omada. And if all of those are offered and I can have a checklist or a survey that inserts me into the appropriate program, that's easier. And it makes it easy on us because if you make a single decision on one DPP program, you're making a bet on a very crowded market. And they may not even exist after you sign a contract.
So consolidation specifically as a becoming more of a trend that is investable even.
Right, yeah. And you know, it's taken this long for a lot of different providers to shake out into the market and to come in. And I think we're seeing better clarity in a lot of the solutions, digital solutions that we're looking at. Either that or I'm getting better clarity.
So just for those people that may have missed the beginning of the introductions here is Dennis is part of the Blue Cross Blue Shield's new venture initiative. So he's coming from a very unique space compared to other corporate venture or traditional institutional venture groups. So important feedback to hear. So we're going to ask Asaf the same question around 2018 and what you considered to be the biggest, most impactful disruptors.
So I will try to give some kind of an Israeli perspective and represent the Israeli industry maybe with two examples. One, and putting aside, tremendous efforts and tremendous areas that, including companies that we have on precision medicine and immunotherapy and stuff, which could be really a major impact on our lives on this planet. Nonetheless, I'm charging myself on right now. I'm feeling that something is missing. This is some part of my body is kind of missing because it's out there. I think the mobile phone is actually a major transition, and the fact that, for instance, we had an Israeli company called Healthy.io, which is for the very first time got an FDA approval for the camera to be used for urine tests at home. Even that small indication, so-called, is a major step with the FDA approving the cellular phone as a clinical device to some extent. I think that small, amazing device eventually will open up a tremendous amount of opportunities and acknowledging that. And I remember a few companies, we have TytoCare in Israel and some other companies that were building up a standalone device not using the smartphone, because back at the time, 4 or 5 years ago, they were afraid about the FDA, you know, the various versions, whether it's going to be approved, whether it's going to be seamlessly integrated into all of the software, whatever it's going to get there. But regardless to the tech challenges over there, I think that fact that the FDA did approve for the first time the cellular phone as a diagnostic tool with the camera, with the camera within the smartphone, it's a major step for all of us in the industry. The other one that I may indicate is on the microbiome side. This is up and coming now as an interesting area. There's a company called Day 2 in Israel, which is doing an amazing job with a not such a popular way of testing your, the outcomes of whatever we eat and stuff like that. But nonetheless, they do manage to do it in a very nice way with a beautiful team, some of which came from Stanford and now in the Weizmann Institution in Israel. They've raised, I don't know, $15 million, $20 million. They're doing their way to the marketplace with a solution for nutrition and for diabetic, and really being able to do it in a very, very accurate way. And this is going back to what you asked me before in terms of what does capture our mind. At least we see a lot of technologies, and the evidence-based medicine has to be kept. There's some challenges now into evidence-based medicine, but at the end of the day, it has to be, the best application has to be based on true science, deep science. And relating to that, if there's a use case, a specific use case, so some of those core technologies, we like to see core technologies that can go either way. But aside from a tremendous amount of applications, there has to be a specific use case which makes sense and makes money. So it has to be monetized. Who's going to pay for it? Who's going to pay for that? So what? Who's going to pay for that? So what? Who's going to pay for that? It has to be part of the process when looking into an investment. And in that sense, happened to be that even Eurotest, now they started a cooperation in Healthy.io with the NHS in the UK, and Day 2 is doing a marvelous job in Israel and elsewhere with those microbiome tests that they are doing. So I think that basically brings together the integration that is needed in a very interesting, sometimes easy application like the urine test, but nonetheless do provide the needs out there in the marketplace. On the other, very deep science related to Day 2 with the microbiome, and eventually translated into something which is here and now based on something that could be monetized, a specific use case that could be monetized.
Okay. So I appreciate the sharing of a couple examples of disruptors from 2018. I'm now going to ask each panel member to share their opinion around what you expect to see or want to see as innovation and disruption in 2019. And I'm going to start Skip, and we're just going to go straight down the aisle.
Innovation and disruption. If I had a crystal ball, I think we're going to continue to see, and this is a little bit going back to 18, acquisitions and groups working together and mergers. And if you go back to 18, we had Roche acquiring Flatiron for $2 billion. We had Amazon acquiring PillPack for $1 billion, and then we had a medical device-esque company acquiring Propeller Health for $2.25 billion, which would be 200. Interesting in that we had 3 different types of stakeholders making these acquisitions. We had a pharmaceutical company, we had a large tech vendor, and then we had a more traditional sort of device-esque company. I think we'll see more of that going forward, and if you really think about who is going to be acquiring companies, and when we invest in a company, we also think about who the natural acquirers of the company would be, and if there's 1 or 2, that's not good. If there are multiple potential acquirers, very good. But I do think we're seeing a lot of interest in from the tech vendors. The ones that can afford to pay are pharma and tech, right? The ones that have the balance sheets that have way too much money that they know what to do with. And so pharma across the board is becoming increasingly interested at different, levels of adoption. Some are very aggressive, some are not so aggressive. But for sure, we're seeing Amazon, Google, Verily with their new $1 billion from Silver Lake, et cetera. Microsoft, don't forget them. They already sell to a lot of providers and a lot of pharma already. We're going to see some acquisitions, I think, which will be interesting. And maybe even some public offerings. See how they can do that.
Was there anything that you, no, let me think how to phrase this. Is there any company that you think or predict may start getting active in digital health tech that hasn't been, that's kind of off the radar?
Wow, that's a tough one. I think the ones we're forgetting to a certain degree would be the Walmarts, Kroger's, CVS's, Walgreens. We talk about them a lot, but we've sort of forgotten about them recently. They already touch consumers, patients. They sell. They have pharmacies.
Yeah.
There's some interesting and clever things you can do engaging a pharmacist into your product or service. So I wouldn't start looking at those.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay, Dennis. So ideas on 2019 and even where software is going to impact where it hasn't yet in digital healthcare and care.
Yeah, so I concur on the mergers and acquisitions. That's going to be way ahead of there. Back to the self-insured employers, you're going to see more and more anything that can simplify the patient's journey, because it's really complicated right now. If you think how to manage yourself through the health insurance existence or through the provider experience, and we waste tons of money just going from one provider to another, duplicate tests, everything else. So we're starting to see more of that. Walmart is a good example. If you are going to have a back problem or back surgery, they'll only send you now to 5 providers. That's it. So you're going to get on a plane and go to Mayo for your back surgery because they've had so many bad, unnecessary surgeries. And people are starting to dig into it, which is the next advent of what we're starting to see is better data to provide better analytics, because it's a mess as far as the data lake that's out there. Pretty much everybody just took their file cabinets and put it in a dumpster and said, go out and get it. And to have reliable, accurate data, to normalize that data so that you can actually do analytics on it, we're starting to see more and more of those companies emerge. Because a lot of analytics companies come to us and say, just give us your data, we'll clean it up, and we'll provide an answer to you. Well, that doesn't solve a problem for us as a provider. We still have a mess of data, and we're relying on someone else. And if we move that data field 1 point, our analytics blow up. And now we pay $500,000 for that same service provider to fix our problem. So it's a mess, but it's getting better.
Okay, thank you. So Dominic, what do you want to see? What do you expect to see in 2019?
So in the end, for me, or healthcare, the secret, no, not the secret, but the goal is to achieve better patient care, right? And better patient care needs also access to care and affordability. And I think right now the healthcare system gets more and more expensive, gets more and more inefficient because it becomes more and more complicated. On the other side, I fully agree with what you said, that digital technologies really would allow us to bring some sort of logic back into the healthcare system by measuring effectiveness and acting accordingly. And I think what's important to achieve this is really to incentivize all the right player and to reduce like those information silos, what people do. So it's not a tech company and a healthcare company. For me, tech, it's an instrument, right? So every healthcare company needs to be a tech company in the future, and they have to understand themselves as a tech company if they really want to deliver on that promise. And that is, in my opinion, or I hope that will happen more and more in 2019.
Okay, good. And Asaf?
My 2 wishes, if I may. One has to do with, sounds boring, but integration. Think about it, there's an ocean of needs, whatever it be, clinical, financial, whatever. There's an ocean of opportunities, and eventually the integration. I mean, how many, eventually if you look into providers and hospitals, and how are they going to integrate so many of those amazing technologies, amazing apps, amazing technologies to do the proper way to the marketplace? The integration there is crucial. Understanding what does it take, both on the startups, either to come up with clusters of solutions potentially, even though it's quite tough to do that, somehow build cooperation around it, but there will be many, many startups with amazing technologies, great technologies that will fall down the drain and eventually won't be able to, despite those great solutions that they came up with because of integration to the system. And second is telemedicine. I think after a decade of telemedicine, and we do practice telemedicine in Israel for at least 10 years, but it seems to now finally started to catch. If we would have found a proper business model, who's going to pay what, around American World or whatever it's going to happen, Teladoc and some other companies, but telemedicine has to catch. It makes sense, it has to catch. There's no clear business model in some cases. I'm also supporting the World Bank Venture Capital Team, the IFC, in some growth markets opportunities in India and Brazil. It's not just us in the States or not just us in Israel. This telemedicine with digital health can truly bring an amazing disruption to the people out there in villages away in India that cannot reach hospitals. And telemedicine, just as illustrating, it's a technology that has to come. It makes sense, but there are some issues with the business model yet. And so hopefully that's my wish, to see those improving and bringing in solutions faster to the community.
Thank you. We only have a couple minutes left. In lieu of opening up for questions, you'll have to find people at the end of the session. I'm doing a rapid fire wrap up. So I'm asking each panel member to answer the same question in 10 words or less. And the first question is, and I'm going to start with Skip, is when is too early for a company to connect with you?
One word, never.
It's never too
No,
early?
it's okay. We talk with the very earliest of companies. That doesn't mean one of us in the very earliest of companies, but it's never too early.
Okay, Dennis?
Where we invest is usually in post-seed, Series A. So a company needs to have some established revenue, some established funding, and lots of data to make that company integrate into our organization. Is a 9-month journey, probably. And so that's where we're most comfortable. I'm stage agnostic. We've gone all the way to Series E for strategic opportunities that we buy their products or services.
Okay, Dominic, when?
Personally, I would also say never. Professionally, we would need to see some sort of proof of concept, whatever that may be.
Okay, Seth?
Probably the same. We're restricted to Israel, so at the moment, so whoever that has a solution, but typically we're investing all licensing technologies from overseas. What we sometimes do, we connect interesting solutions to Philips or to Teva venture teams if needed, if we cannot do it ourselves. So this is where we play.
We're going to go backwards, starting with the Seth. When's it too late?
We're going to do a seed and A, so B rounds will typically not be our ticket.
Yeah, when we can get no meaningful stake.
Okay.
Agreed, when we can't get a meaningful return.
Yeah, for us, it's 100% return. If we do not feel we can get a 10x multiple on our investment, whatever stage, then we won't do it. And if we think we can, it could be $1 billion company, but if we think we're going to hit 10 billion, we're fine.
Okay, and at our time of being time out, the shortest, fastest way to deliver a top tip to people in the room, starting with Skip.
Shortest, fastest.
Top tip.
I think getting a good connection into an introduction into venture capitals is very important, and also having a well thought out, methodical deck that you can present well. Number one, it becomes transparency and a well articulated business plan.
Thank you.
Referrals are important, I agree. Our best referrals usually come from people like Skip or someone that has credibility in the marketplace that can also introduce you into a venture fund.
Awesome. Dominic?
Incentivize every stakeholder that is affected by your solution. Don't forget anyone. The second one, avoid spelling mistakes in the emails.
Wonderful. Seth?
Mine is, it's tough. See reality as it truly is. It's not easy. This is venture capital. Things are not necessarily have materialized yet. So look into the reality as much as you can as it is and validate whatever you think.
Wonderful. And again, taking moderator license, my top tip would be do the work. Do the work of figuring out who we are, what we're interested in, and that also will fuel your introductions that I think the majority, if not all of us, are looking for. So we try to get a lot of information and perspective from a really rich in experience, but also diverse panel up here. Thank you everyone for your attention, and hopefully you'll find other opportunities to connect with panel members. Thanks for participating.